Chapter 1. The Girl at the Docking Bay. The Far Horizon's engines gave one last reluctant sigh before going quiet, leaving only the faint vibration of the station's docking clamps locking into place. Elias Ward unbuckled from the pilot's chair, flexing his stiff shoulders. The air here always smelled faintly of coolant and sterilizer, station air, but after 3 weeks of freighter corridors and recycled oxygen, it felt almost clean. The docking bay beyond his viewport was a swirl of motion, gleaming insectoid loaders crawling over cargo pallets, floating maintenance drones darting between ships, the vast blue and silver curve of Verris Prime rotating slowly beneath them. Through the bay's transparent shielding, the planet's oceans glittered like spilled gemstones under the twin suns. Elias stepped down the gangway, boots clanging against a metallic floor. He kept his head low as he moved toward the customs gate. Humans weren't exactly welcome here. The Verris were polite enough in trade, but there was always a guarded distance in their eyes, as if humanity were a storm cloud on the horizon. He was halfway to the exit when he noticed her. A small figure stood near the base of a cargo crane, half hidden in its shadow. She was delicate, almost bird-like, her violet-hued skin patterned with faint silver traceries that caught the light. Her eyes, impossibly large, a deep shade of midnight blue, locked on him with unnerving intensity. She stepped forward. "You're human." Elias frowned. "Last I checked." He tried to walk past her, but she moved to block his path. "Please," she said, and her voice had the tremor of someone who'd already been told no too many times. "Please, human, make my mom smile again. Be her husband." Elias blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What?" The girl swallowed hard, her silver facial markings pulsing faintly. "Some kind of stress reaction, maybe. She doesn't smile anymore. Not since my father was taken by the deep drift. I've tried everything. You're different. You'll make her laugh again. You'll make her want to live." He glanced around. Various dock workers moved past without so much as a glance in their direction. The girl's words might as well have been invisible to them. "Look, kid," he said slowly, crouching so he could meet her gaze, "I'm just here to deliver a cargo manifest, pick up some fuel, and get gone. Whatever you think I can do, you've got the wrong man." But the girl didn't flinch. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, knuckles pale under violet skin. "I've seen humans in the market streets. You talk to strangers. You laugh in public. You don't hide your hearts. That's why." The statement caught him off guard. She said it like a fact, like she'd been studying his kind. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rin." "Well, Rin, where's your mother?" Her gaze flicked toward the high glass archways, leading deeper into the station. Through them, Elias could see the sprawling city suspended in the curve of the orbital ring. Towers like spiraling seashells, neon and bioluminescent panels shimmering in the low artificial dusk. "She works in the sky Spire," Rin whispered. "Astrocartography archives. She's important, but she's alone." Elias hesitated. There was a part of him, the part that had survived war, smuggling runs, and more than one planetary blockade, that told him to walk away now. No entanglements, no drama. But there was another part, the one he kept buried under sarcasm and cynicism, that recognized a raw plea in her voice. "All right," he said finally with a sigh. "I'll meet her. No promises." Rin's face lit with fragile hope. She reached into a small satchel and pulled out a thin crystalline disc etched with spirals. "This is a visitor pass. It will let you through the inner gates without a sponsor. I stole it." He took it, feeling the faint hum of encoded permissions beneath his fingertips. "That's not a good habit, kid." "I don't care," she said, chin lifting. "Just don't make her cry more than she already does." As Rin turned toward the station's inner corridors, Elias followed, the metallic echo of their footsteps mixing with the low hum of grav stabilizers and the distant calls of alien vendors. Above them, through the arched glass, Verris Prime's oceans roll beneath the stars. For the first time in weeks, Elias felt that subtle tingle in his gut, the one that always meant trouble. Chapter 2. The Widow of Verris. The sky spire rose out of Verris Prime's orbital city like a blade of glass, its surface glimmering with shifting patterns of blue and gold, as sunlight from the twin suns refracted across the station's curvature. Even from a distance, Elias could feel the change in the air, colder, cleaner, tinged with something floral and metallic. This was not the place for freighter pilots in worn jackets and oil-stained boots. Rin led the way across a suspended causeway. Transparent walls curved above them, revealing the dizzying sweep of the planet's oceans below. Ships moved between clouds like silver insects, their contrails carving faint lines across the emerald surface. Elias forced himself not to glance down too often. Space never bothered him. Open sky without a hull around it did. "This is where she works?" he asked, nodding toward the Spire's crystalline skin. Rin nodded, her small hands clasped tight in front of her. "The cartography archives. She keeps the maps of the drift lanes. Without her work, ships would be lost between the stars." Inside, the air was still, almost reverent. The floor was polished obsidian shot through with veins of luminous stone, and the walls shimmered with holographic star fields that shifted as he moved. Tall Verris archivists drifted to the halls, their silken robes whispering against the floor, their pale, luminous eyes sliding past Elias without expression. He was keenly aware of the contrast, his broad human frame, his boots scuffing the perfect surface, the faint smell of engine oil clinging to his jacket. If the Verris noticed, they didn't show it. But they didn't have to. Rin stopped before a set of tall, curved doors that opened soundlessly at her approach. Kiri was waiting inside. She stood by a massive curved viewport that looked out over the planet, her back straight, her posture deliberate. Her hair, a pale, almost metallic silver, was braided in an intricate pattern down her back, and her robes were deep indigo edged with thin silver bands. Her skin, the same violet hue as Rin's, seemed almost translucent in the soft light. She didn't turn when they entered. "Mother," Rin said softly, "this is the human I told you about." Kiri glanced over her shoulder, and Elias felt as though he'd been measured, weighed, and found wanting in a single flick of her gaze. Her eyes were the same deep midnight as Rin's, but colder, more distant. "I see," she said, her voice even, the syllables clipped with the precision of someone accustomed to authority. "You may go, Rin. I will speak with our guest." Rin hesitated, glanced at Elias, then left, the doors closing silently behind her. Kiri turned fully to face him, folding her hands in front of her. "Human," she began, the word not an insult, but not exactly neutral either. "You should know that whatever my daughter has said, I am not seeking companionship. My life is my work, and my work is vital." Elias lifted his hands in mock surrender. "Good to know. I'm not exactly in the market for settling down on an orbital palace either. I just figured I'd hear you out, or you could hear me out." Her brow furrowed slightly, a tiny crack in the otherwise perfect composure. "Hear you out about what?" He shrugged. "About why your daughter thinks you need someone who makes you laugh." Something flickered in her eyes. Irritation, maybe, but layered over something older and heavier. "My people mourn differently than yours," she said at last. "We wear our loss. We honor it. A decade of remembrance is the minimum. Anything less is dishonor to the dead." Elias stepped closer to the viewport, looking down at the oceans far below. "And what about the living?" he asked quietly. Kiri didn't answer right away. Outside, the suns had shifted, casting gold light over the Spire's walls, making the entire room seem to glow. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "You speak as though your way is better." "No," he said, turning to meet her gaze. "I speak as though sometimes you need to breathe again before you drown." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. The freighter pilot who had lost his family to war, and the astrocartographer bound by a culture that demanded her grief be worn like armor. It was Kiri who broke the moment, straightening her posture until her expression was once more a perfect mask. "If you are here only to challenge my customs, you may leave." But she hesitated, just enough for him to notice. "If you are here for another reason, I will hear it. Later." She turned back toward the viewport. It was a dismissal, but not a final one. Elias nodded once and stepped back toward the doors. Later, then, as the doors slid shut behind him, he caught sight of Rin waiting in the corridor, hope flickering in her eyes. He didn't have the heart to tell her that her mother's walls looked unshakable. Chapter 3. A Bargain of Stars. The sky Spire felt different the next day. The corridors were quieter, the usual hushed footsteps of archivists replaced by the faint hum of security drones gliding along the walls. Elias could feel the stairs now. Quick glances that flicked away when he looked back, like whispers that cut off when you enter a room. Rin found him in the atrium, where a holographic model of the galaxy turned slowly above a circular pool of still water. Her face was pale, the silver tracery along her temples dim. "They say you did it," she whispered. "Did what?" Elias asked, though the knot in his gut already guessed. "Stole my mother's chart." Her voice cracked on the last word. "The one with the drift routes. It's gone." Before Elias could answer, Kiri appeared, her robe's silver edging catching the light. Her expression was harder than yesterday, and there was something brittle in her voice. "Security reports that the chart was removed from my private archive last night. The system logs show human access." Elias blinked. "Human access? I don't even know your file system." Kiri's eyes narrowed. "That is what makes it suspicious. Only a fool would leave no trace, or someone clever enough to plant a trace elsewhere. You think I came all this way, sat through your speeches about honor, just to rob you blind?" Her voice was flat. "I think your kind has a history of improvisation and greed." The words landed heavier than they should have, not because they were untrue in some cases, but because he could feel the disappointment behind them. Rin's gaze darted between them, her hands clenching and unclenching. Elias took a breath, forcing his voice to stay calm. "All right, let's pretend for a moment I didn't take it, which I didn't. If someone else did, what happens?" Kiri's jaw tightened. "That chart contains routes through unstable wormholes. In the wrong hands, entire colonies could be cut off or exploited. Then we get it back." "We?" The word came out like a challenge. "Yeah, you know the station's politics. I know how to track people who don't want to be found. You've got precision, I've got flexibility." Kiri studied him for a long moment, the glow from the galaxy hologram reflecting in her midnight eyes. "You expect me to trust you with more access when you are already the prime suspect?" "I expect you to let me prove I'm not the thief," Elias said. "If I find the one who did this, you get your chart back and I clear my name. If I can't, then I'll walk and you'll never see me again." Rin stepped closer to her mother. "Please, let him try. If he wanted to hurt you, he would have already." Kiri's gaze softened for just a heartbeat when it landed on her daughter. Then she turned back to Elias. "Very well. You will have limited access to my navigation logs, the non-sensitive copies, and you will answer to me in every decision you make. If you cross my line, human, I will see you spaced before you can draw your next breath." Elias smirked faintly. "Sounds fair." She handed him a thin hexagonal datapad, its surface etched with faint constellations. This will open restricted travel sectors, but it will also track you. Do not test me. The data pad was warm in his hand, almost alive. He could feel the weight of the deal in it. Not just an agreement, but a fragile bridge between two worlds. Where do we start? He asked. Kiri's lips curved in the faintest shadow of a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. The Black Nebula. If the thieves wish to hide, there is no darker place. Elias glanced at Rin, who was watching them with an expression halfway between fear and excitement. Then I guess we'd better get moving. The three of them stood under the shifting light of the holographic galaxy, the weight of the missing chart, and the unspoken tension between human stubbornness and Verris' caution, stretching between them like the space between stars. Chapter 4, The Black Nebula Chase. The far horizon shuddered as its main drives kicked in, the hum of the engines a low. Living thing under Elias's boots. Outside the viewport, Verris Prime's twin sun slipped away into darkness, replaced by the cold sweep of open space. Kiri stood just behind his chair, her hands folded neatly, posture unshaken despite the slight tremor of the freighter's aging stabilizers. She was dressed in a lighter robe now, still formal by his standards, but trimmed for mobility. Her eyes moved constantly, scanning the NAV readouts as though they were an extension of her own mind. You should know, she said without looking at him. The Black Nebula is not a place we enter lightly. Navigation is unreliable. Space behaves unpredictably. Elias grinned, flicking a row of manual switches. Sounds like my kind of neighborhood. She arched an eyebrow. You say that now. The nebula rose ahead, a vast, boiling wall of black and violet clouds, shot through with threads of green lightning that lit the darkness in eerie, silent flashes. It seemed to swallow the stars themselves, a hungry shadow sprawling across the void. Chapter 5, Shadows of the Past. The hidden port was little more than a hollowed-out asteroid, its jagged edges barely visible against the darkness of the Black Nebula. The docking beacon was a faint pulse of crimson light, half buried in swirling black gas. Elias brought the far horizon in on minimal thrusters, each maneuver a careful dance against the unpredictable gravitational eddies that tugged at the ship. Kiri stood at his side, her gaze locked on the jagged opening ahead. They call this place Drift Haven, she said quietly. A sanctuary for those who live beyond law or loyalty. Sounds cozy, Elias muttered, hands steady on the yoke. Inside, the asteroid hangar was lit by a dull amber glow. The air shimmered with a faint haze of ion exhaust, and the metallic tang of overheated engines seeped into the ship as they docked. Elias could feel the subtle shudder through the hull, like the rock itself resented their presence. When the hatch opened, the noise at first, shouts in half a dozen alien tongues, the thump of booted feet on metal, the whine of poorly maintained machinery. The dock was crowded with ships of every shape and size, cobbled together freighters, sleek raider skiffs, even a few rusting war-era corvettes. Kiri walked with purpose, her indigo robe catching the warm light, giving her the air of someone who belonged anywhere she chose to stand. Elias followed half a step behind, scanning the crowd. Their contact wasn't hard to find, a broad-shouldered trader with mottled teal skin, leaning against a cargo crate. His smile was too practiced to be friendly. You have something that doesn't belong to you, Kiri said without preamble. The trader's smile widened. Oh, I have many things that don't belong to me. Be specific. Elias stepped forward, his voice flat. A chart. Drift routes. Stolen from the Verris Prime archives. Hand it over, and maybe we leave before the air here gets thin. The trader chuckled, a low, rattling sound. Humans, always so quick to threaten. Why should I give you anything? Kiri's expression didn't change, but there was an edge in her voice now. Because if you don't, I will show you what happens to those who steal from the woman who maps the stars. Something in her tone made the trader hesitate. After a long moment, he reached into a pouch and pulled out a slim, crystalline data prism. "It's encrypted," he said. "Wasn't worth the trouble. I only took it to sell." Curie took the prism, her fingers brushing its surface with almost reverent care. The light within it pulsed faintly, as if recognizing its rightful owner. They left without another word, Elias keeping one hand near the grip of his sidearm until the far horizon's hatch sealed behind them. Back in the cockpit, Curie slotted the prism into her console. The holographic display bloomed to life, star fields unfolding in intricate webs of silver light. Drift routes twisted to the galaxy like glowing threads, each one meticulously marked. Then, without warning, a separate image appeared, not a map, but a face. Verris features, male, with eyes so much like Rin's that Elias knew instantly who it was. Curie froze. Her hands hovered over the controls, but she didn't move to stop the playback. The recording spoke in Verris, the tone soft, intimate. Elias didn't understand the words, but he didn't need to. The ache in Curie's expression told him everything. The man smiled faintly, said something that made her blink hard, and then the image dissolved into the black of space. When she finally spoke, her voice was unsteady. He recorded this before the deep drift took him. It was hidden in the chart. I thought all his words were gone. Elias leaned against the console, not intruding but not leaving either. You kept working, kept breathing, but maybe you never stopped holding your breath. Her eyes met his, and for the first time since they'd met, the cold precision was gone. She looked tired, human, in a way she would never admit. "Why are you here, Elias Ward?" she asked softly. He gave a small shrug. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone and think you can't afford to feel it. And because your kid asked me to make you smile again." Her lips curved, just barely. Not a smile, not yet, but the first hint of one. Outside, the nebula's shadow swirled past the viewport. But for the first time, Elias thought he saw light breaking through. Chapter 6, The Invitation. The far horizon touched down on Verris Prime's orbital dock with a low, settling hum, the vibration easing from Elias's boots as the engines powered down. The nebula's darkness was behind them, but the air inside the docking bay felt heavy, charged, like a storm was waiting in the corridors ahead. Curie stood by the hatch, her posture as precise as always, yet there was a subtle tension in the set of her shoulders. She had changed back into her deep indigo mourning robes, the silver edging catching the station lights. If Elias didn't know better, he might have thought nothing between them had shifted. But he did know better. He'd seen her eyes when that recording played. Rin was waiting just outside, her midnight blue eyes wide and searching. "Did you find it?" she asked. Curie held up the crystalline prism, the light inside it flickering faintly. "It is safe." Relief flooded Rin's face. And then, quickly, something else. And him. She looked between the two of them, her small voice carrying a hope Elias could almost feel. Curie hesitated, and Elias caught the faintest ripple in her calm mask. "We will speak of it later." But the moment they stepped into the public corridors of the orbital ring, that private space between them evaporated. Very citizens turned to watch. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The sight of the revered astrocartographer returning with a human at her side was enough to draw stares, and not the friendly kind. A tall Verris male in a pale council robe intercepted them near the central lift. His voice was smooth, but each word was edged like a blade. "Curie of the Sky Spire, there is concern among the council. We have heard troubling accounts that you have traveled into restricted sectors in the company of an outsider." His eyes flicked to Elias, then back to her. "You know the morning code. This conduct dishonors your station." Curie's reply was measured, her voice a perfect chord of restraint and authority. "My conduct preserved a chart vital to the safety of our fleets." The human's assistance was necessary. Necessary, the council repeated, as though tasting the word and finding it unpalatable. We expect your association to end immediately. Elias felt the muscles in his jaw tighten. He could read the subtext well enough. Human hands are good for the dirty work, but not for standing beside you in daylight. He opened his mouth to speak, but Rin got there first. Her voice rang out, sharp and trembling. He's the first one who's made her laugh again. The corridor went silent. Verris' bystanders turned. Kiri's head snapped toward her daughter, but Rin's chin was high, her silver tracery bright with defiance. Father's gone, Rin continued, her small hands balled into fists. You all tell her to wear sorrow like it's armor, but she's been drowning in it for years. He pulled her out, even if it was just for a little while. The counselor's expression tightened. Child, she's my mother. Rin cut him off, and I want her to live. Kiri stood frozen, her gaze locked on her daughter. The air between them was electric, a tension that Elias could almost feel pressing against his skin. He had no idea which way she'd go, retreat into the safe walls of her culture, or step into something far more dangerous. Then Kiri turned to him. Slowly, deliberately, she reached up and unfastened the clasp of her mourning robe. The heavy fabric slid from her shoulders, revealing a deep blue garment beneath, lighter and edged with gold. Not the colors of grief, but of renewal. You will join my household for the evening meal, she said, her voice carrying through the hall. As my guest. Elias blinked, caught between surprise and something that felt dangerously like hope. From the murmurs in the crowd, he knew what it meant. Verris' meals were intimate, binding events. An invitation like this, given publicly, was the closest thing their culture had to a declaration. The counselor's eyes narrowed, but Kiri didn't look at him. Her gaze stayed on Elias, steady and unflinching. Well, Elias said, his mouth quirking in a lopsided smile. Guess I'll have to find something nicer than this jacket. For the first time, Kiri's lips curved, faint but real. Perhaps. Rin's smile was brighter than the station lights. Elias followed them toward the lift, the hum of the station all around him. For the first time since setting foot here, he wasn't just a trespasser in a world that didn't want him. He was walking into it by invitation. Chapter 7. Fire in the Spire. The sky spire's upper levels were quiet that night, the kind of stillness that felt curated. Air temperature precisely balanced, ambient light dimmed to a soft indigo glow, and the hum of the building's grav stabilizers a low, constant note in the background. From Kiri's terrace, the orbital city curved away beneath a dome of glass, stars hanging like lanterns in the black. Dinner had been strange. Verris' food was delicate. Every portion an art piece, each course served in silence before carefully measured conversation resumed. Elias had done his best to follow Kiri's cues, though he caught Rin grinning every time he broke some unspoken rule. But for all the formalities, something between them had shifted. Kiri's glances lingered longer, her voice occasionally softening when she addressed him, which made what happened next feel like an ambush in more ways than one. It began as a flicker in the lights. So brief Elias thought it was a trick of his eyes. Then the hum of the grav stabilizers wavered, replaced by a low, rising vibration that made the glasses on the table tremble. Kiri's head snapped toward the window. That's not a system fluctuation. The explosion tore through the lower levels a heartbeat later, a bloom of white-blue light that sent a shudder up through the spire's frame. Alarms wailed, their crystalline chimes too calm for the violence they signaled. The lights went out, replaced by the pulsing red of emergency strips. Rin gasped, clutching her mother's arm. Stay with her, Kiri told Elias, already moving toward the control panel. But before she could reach it, a section of the terrace glass splintered inwards. Figures in matte black armor poured through the breach, their visors reflecting the red emergency glow. Saboteurs, and from the look of their equipment, not random pirates. These were professionals. "Take the archives," one barked in a clipped Verris dialect. Elias didn't think. He moved, putting himself between Kiri, Rin, and the intruders. A stun bolt cracked past his shoulder, sizzling into the wall. He lunged forward, grabbing the nearest attacker and driving a fist into the weak joint of the armor's neckplate. The man staggered back, his weapon clattering to the floor. Two more moved in, but Elias was faster, dropping into a crouch as a blast seared the air where his head had been. He kicked out, catching one in the knee, the other in the chest, knocking them into each other. Behind him, Kiri had pulled Rin into the cover of a support pillar, one arm wrapped protectively around her daughter, but her eyes were locked on Elias, on the way he fought without hesitation, without retreat, like the outcome was already decided. Verris' warriors fought with precision, measured and controlled. Humans, she realized, fought with something else entirely, a furious loyalty that burned as bright as it was reckless. One of the saboteurs broke past him, heading for the archive console on the far wall. Elias caught the motion and threw himself into a sprint, slamming into the attacker before he could reach it. They crashed hard into the floor, and Elias wrenched the weapon from his grip, firing a stun shot into the man's chest. The remaining intruders hesitated, reassessing. Then, as quickly as they'd come, they retreated to the shattered glass, jetpacks igniting in bursts of blue flame. The wail of station security sirens echoed in the distance. Elias straightened, breathing hard, the faint scent of scorched composite clinging to him. His jacket was singed, his knuckles raw, but he was still standing. Kiri stepped forward, her gaze searching his face. "You could have died." He wiped a smear of blood from his cheek. "So could you." Something passed between them, something unspoken but heavy. Kiri's voice was quieter now. "We are taught to defend what matters, but you throw yourself into the fire without knowing if you'll survive it." Elias gave a faint, lopsided smile. "Guess that's just a human thing." For the first time, she didn't argue. Rin emerged from behind a pillar, eyes wide but alight with pride. She took Elias's hand in both of hers. "I told you," she said softly to her mother. "He wouldn't let us fall." The station guard arrived moments later, but by then, the danger had passed. The saboteurs were gone, but so was any question in Kiri's mind about the human's place here. He had fought not for duty, not for pay, but for them. Chapter 8. The Smile That Changed Everything. The Sky Spire's med chamber was quiet except for the soft pulse of the diagnostic field around Elias's bed. He lay propped against the angled rest, one arm bandaged from wrist to elbow, a faint shimmer of healing nanogel across his cheek. The air smelled faintly of sterile mist and some floral note that reminded him of the ocean breeze on Verris Prime. Kiri sat beside him, her posture no longer the formal, straight-back stance of the archivist. She was close enough that her robe brushed the side of his bed, her silver hair falling forward over one shoulder as she studied him. She wore no morning colors now. Instead, her robe was deep blue threaded with warm gold, the tones catching in the med chamber's light. "You should be resting," she said, though her voice had none of the coldness from their first meeting. Elias smirked faintly. "I'm lying down, aren't I? That counts." Her gaze softened, though her fingers tightened on the edge of the bed. "When the glass broke and they came for us, I saw you move before you even knew the odds. You did not pause to consider whether we could win." "That's kind of the point," he replied. "Sometimes you just move because waiting means losing." She was quiet for a moment, her eyes fixed on his. "In my world, we honor loss by wearing it like a shield. In yours, you fight so hard to keep from losing in the first place that you burn yourself to embers." Elias tilted his head. "Maybe somewhere in the middle is where we're supposed to meet. A flicker of something, maybe amusement, maybe relief, crossed her face. She reached into her sleeve and drew out the crystalline prism they'd recovered. I restored the stolen data to the archives. But this, she placed the prism on the bed beside him. This I will keep. It holds my mate's voice, but it no longer feels like a chain. You made that possible. Elias didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything. He just nodded, his eyes on hers. The med chamber door slid open, and Rin stepped in, her small frame almost vibrating with restrained excitement. She carried a shallow dish, steam curling from its surface. "Dinner," she announced. "Not the fancy kind. I made it." She set the dish on the bed table with a grin. "For all of us." Kiri glanced at her daughter, then back at Elias. Slowly, she reached across and took his hand in hers. Her fingers were cool, but steady. "Stay," she said simply. Elias blinked. "Stay." Not as a guest, not as a passing traveler. Stay and be part of this household. She paused, and for the first time since he'd met her, her lips curved into a smile, a real one, warm and unguarded. The kind Rin must have been remembering when she made her impossible request at the docking bay. It hit him harder than he expected. The sight of her like that, Rin, standing on the other side of the bed, leaned in and whispered, "Told you I could make her smile again." Elias chuckled, glancing between the two of them. "Guess I don't have much of a choice now, do I?" "No," Kiri said, still smiling. "You don't." Beyond the glass of the med chamber, the great curve of Verris Prime rolled beneath the station, its oceans reflecting the twin suns. The far horizon sat moored in the harbor below, its engines silent, its restless pilot finally anchored. For the first time in years, Elias Ward didn't feel like a man in transit. He was home. The far horizon drifted silently in orbit above Verris Prime, her engines humming with the soft, steady rhythm of a ship at peace. Through the cockpit's curved viewport, alien constellations burned bright against the velvet dark, their shapes unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. Down below, the city's neon arteries pulsed, painting the ocean's surface in shimmering ribbons of color. Elias stood by the forward glass, hands resting on the frame. He felt the faint pull of artificial gravity under his boots, the subtle thrum of life support systems wrapping the vessel in a steady heartbeat. Kiri stepped up beside him, her reflection merging with the stars. She no longer wore the morning indigo, her robe now a deep blue kissed with gold, the colors alive under dim cockpit lights. "It's strange," she said quietly. "The charts I keep, they've always shown me where to go. But lately, I've felt as though I've been lost for years." Elias turned to her, a slow smile tugging at his mouth. "Then maybe it's time you stopped navigating by the stars and started navigating by something closer." She looked at him, the faintest laugh escaping her, soft, real. Then she reached out and took his hand. "I think," she whispered, "I have found my way home." Outside, a streak of light cut across the horizon, a shooting star burning its path through alien skies. And for the first time in a long time, they both knew exactly where they belonged.